Okay, so welcome to our class on, or our discussion group of Torah 101 on Lecha. This is a beautiful portion. It's the third one from, hold on, let me just get to my, it's the third parasha in the book of Genesis. Let me share the screen, hold on. And we begin, I don't know if everyone can see. We begin in chapter 12, verse 1. The parasha is called Lecha, which means get yourself out. You see here in Hebrew, it says Lecha. Now the Lord said to Abram, get out of your country and from your family and from your father's house and go to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and he who curses you will I curse, and in you shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So Abraham went, his name was still Abram, as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot, his nephew, went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. I was excited from that because I'm 75, and we never know when God is going to call us. We could be any age, and God can call us. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and everything that they had gathered. And I love these words here, and the souls that they had made in Haran. In other words, there were people who they had spoken to about what Abram had heard, and all these people came with them. In the last portion, we saw Noah, who had 120 years to tell all the people to come on the ark, and nobody came. But here is a progression. Abram had his wife come with him and his nephew, Lot, and everything that they had. And it says that they had 70 souls, or I'm not sure, the souls that they had made in Haran. And they went forth to go into the land of Canaan. And into the land of Canaan they came. And Abram passed through the land into a place of Shechem. Later on, we'll read about Shechem with the sons of Jacob, to the terebinth, to the oak trees of Moreh. And the Canaanite was then in the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your seed will I give this land. And he built there an altar to the Lord who appeared to him. And he removed from thence unto the mountain, which means he moved. He moved everyone who was with him to the mountains on the east of Bethel. And he pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And he built there an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. Here it says, Vayikra b'shem Yud He Vav He. He knew how to pronounce the name of God, Yud He Vav He, because God had spoken to him and most probably told him his name, so he called upon the name. Today, our rabbis tell us that we are not allowed to pronounce the name, but later on we will see that Moshe pronounced the name. It's what happened was in the 10 Commandments, it says we are not allowed to take the name of God in vain, but it doesn't mean we can't pronounce his name. So sadly, we don't know how to say Yud He Vav He. Some say Yehovah, some say Yahweh, but one day we will know when God reveals it to us. And Abram journeyed, going still toward the south. Here it's Negevah. So he's going toward the Negev, which we still know in Israel today. And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to live there. for the famine was very severe in the land. And it came to pass, when he came near Egypt, he said to Sarah, his wife, behold, now I know that you are a fair woman, meaning you are a beautiful woman to look upon. And it will come to pass when the Egyptians shall see you, that they will say, this is his wife, and they will kill me. But you they will keep alive. You see, the customs of these pagan countries, when they saw a beautiful woman, they could kill the husband and keep the wife. Say, I pray you, tell them that you're my sister, so that it may be well with me for your sake, and that my soul may live because of you. So, people say that Abram had a lot of faith, but here it shows that he didn't have much faith, because he's telling them, say, you're my sister. And it came to pass when Abram had come into Egypt, and the Egyptians saw that she was beautiful, the princes of Pharaoh saw her and praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. So they captured her. They took her away from Abram and they brought her into Pharaoh's home. And he dealt well with Abram because of her. He had sheep and oxen and donkeys and male servants and maidservants and female donkeys and camels. But the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, what did you do to me? Why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her to be my wife? Now, therefore, take your wife and go your way. And Pharaoh gave men charge concerning him, and they brought him on the way and his wife and all that he had. So one of the things that I mentioned to you before is that the Torah gives us pictures. Hebrew is very different than Greek. The Bible, when the Bible was translated from Hebrew into Greek, the rabbis who had to translate the Bible into the Septuagint held a day of mourning, because they knew that there was no way that they could translate from the Hebrew into a Western language, because you cannot. There's an expression that says, one picture is worth 1,000 words. So the Bible gives us pictures, and in many ways, it's like a progressive revelation. One of the things that I noticed here is that Abram went down into Egypt, and Sarai was taken captive and put into the Pharaoh's home. He was made basically her slave or a concubine. But then God put plagues upon Pharaoh, and they were set free, and Abram left wealthier than before. Can you think of a picture that happens later that gives us the same idea?
In Egypt, when they were with Moses, when they went down to Egypt.
They went down?
And they were slaves in Egypt.
And God sent plagues?
And God sent plagues, and then
they were set free, and they left wealthier than before.
Right.
It's interesting, right from the very beginning, we always see these pictures. Adam and Eve were given one rule. They broke it. Moses is given 10 rules, 10 commandments. We break them. We suffer the consequences. It's like God doesn't do new things. What he does is he takes what he does and he repeats them, and he repeats them, and sometimes with a stronger message and a stronger message until we get it. And down through the ages, we've always seen this. Okay, now chapter 13. And Abram went up to Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had. And he took Lot with him into the south, into the Negev. Abram was rich, very rich, in cattle and silver and in gold. And he went on his journeys from the Negev to Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel, the house of God, and Ai, unto the place of the altar, which he had made there at first, and Abram called there on the name of the Lord. And Lot also, who went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. The land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together. For everything they had, their wealth was so great, everything that they owned, so that they could not dwell together. They had too much cattle to be in one place. And there were arguments. There was a strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle, those who took care of Abram's cattle, and those who took care of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelt in the land. So they already had enemies who lived there. And Abram said to Lot, let's not fight, I beg you, between you and me. We're family, between my herdsmen and yours, for we are brethren, we're family. Is not the whole land in front of us? So let's separate. You separate yourself from me. If you will go to the left, I will go to the right. If you will go to the right, I will go to the left. Lot lifted up his eyes and saw all the plain of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as you go unto Zoar. So Lot chose all the plain of Jordan and journeyed east, and they separated themselves, the one from the other. Now, this is already beginning to bring me another picture. Abram was told to go to Canaan, which would be the promised land. He was promised by God that this land would belong to him and all his descendants. Here, Lot, who was his nephew, who heard the message, he decides to stay on this side of the Jordan because it looked so much better. Do you remember further down the line, later on in the Torah, where we see another group of people who do exactly the same things? Do you remember when Reuben, I think it was Shimon and the half tribe of Manasseh, decided when they went in to take the land, they stayed on the east of Jordan, and Moses made them promise that the men would go in and fight. They could leave their cattle and their children there, and they would go in and fight. Later, when we were taken captive into Babylon, the tribes that were on the east side of the Jordan, on this side, were the first ones captured. And here, Lot himself, that we'll see very soon, gets captured. Again, pictures. God continuously paints pictures for us so that we can see what our behavior needs to be when it comes to following the Torah.
I have a question, Peggy.
Yes.
Why I follow what you said with the Jordan, but why were the people on the east captured? I thought the people on the east were the ones that where they were supposed to go, and on the west was the Jordan. Did I mix up the east and west? I thought the west was where like Shimon or whatever, or Reuben went, but I thought that was the not preferred side. But you said the east.
Well, according to this, Lot chose all the plain, and Lot journeyed east. So it was on this side of the Jordan, not in where the promised land is, on the other side of the Jordan.
But the Jordan, I have that mixed up. I thought the east of the Jordan was the promised land, and the west was more towards the Atlantic. And I'm mixing up the east and west.
Maybe, to tell you the truth, I'd have to check, but according to this, it's the east. So Abram lived in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, and they sinned against the Lord exceedingly. This is where we get we'll see this later on. This is where we get the word sodomite. And the Lord said to Abram, After Lot was separated from him. Lift up your eyes now. Look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward, for all the land which you see, to you will I give it, and to your seed forever. Do you know someone else who God told this to? And almost exactly the same words. Do you remember when he spoke to Joshua? And he said, wherever you walk, wherever you step your feet, north, south, east, and west, wherever you go, this land I will give to you and your seed forever. Again, pictures. And I will make your seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall your seed also be numbered. So arise, walk through the land in the length of it and in the breadth of it, for unto you will I give it. And Abram moved his tent and came and dwelt by the terebinths of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built there an altar to the Lord. So we see from here, Hebron, which is where our forefathers are buried. There was when Abraham purchased for his wife the lots, to bury her, the place to bury her. I think it's in Hebron. Am I right, Miriam?
So.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
And today we're not allowed to go into Hebron. Today they say it doesn't belong to us. But right here in the Torah, it's just so clear.
Just one thing to understand more fully.
Yes.
When you say Hebrew is a language of pictures, the story is given like a language. You're not talking. I know. Anyway, let me try and word what I mean. I know what you mean. That the stories are not given like a newspaper clipping or facts and this happened and there's a rhythm to it and a poetry and there's a God repeats things in a different way. Like it's very poetic.
Yes.
But the language itself.
No, even the language itself. If you look at the language, even the letters, it comes from original hieroglyphics. These were pictures, very similar to Chinese letters.
Yeah, okay.
Which are pictures.
Right. Okay.
Everything from the language from the letters itself to the thought of Hebrew. Remember, it's coming from the heart of God.
Right.
And that's how he speaks to us, by giving us pictures.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to clarify.
And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim, that they make war with Bera, king of Sodom, and Birsha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, the same is Zoar. All these came as allies unto the valley of Siddim. The same is the Salt Sea. This is the Dead Sea that we know today. 12 years they served Chedor Laomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. And in the 14th year came Chedor Laomer and the kings that were with him, and they destroyed the Rephaim in Ashtaroth, Karnaim, and the Zuzim in Ham, and the Emim in Shaveh Kiriataim, and the Horim in their Mount Seir unto El Paran, which is by the wilderness. And they turned back and came to Ein Mishpat, the same as Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites that dwelt in Hazazon Tamar. We see Amalekites are very ancient people, and they have been our enemies from the beginning of the creation of our nation. And there went out the king of Sodom, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, who is the same as Zoar, and they set the battle in array against them in the valley of Siddim, against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and the title king Goyim, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of slime pits. Slime is the same as the asphalt. It's very sticky and very, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there. And they that remained fled to the mountain. They took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals, everything that they had, and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. And there came one who escaped and told Abram the Hebrew. Now he dwelt by the oak trees of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and brother of Aner. And these were confederate. They were friends with Abram. And when Abram heard that his brother, his nephew, was taken captive, he led forth his trained men, who were born in his house, 318, and pursued as far as Dan. He divided himself against them by night, he and his servants, and destroyed them, and pursued them to Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus, which we know is in Lebanon. And he brought back all the goods, and he brought back his brother Lot.
Sorry, I think isn't Damascus in Syria?
Oh, yeah, Syria. Excuse me, you're
Okay.
right.
That's okay.
And he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his brother Lot and his goods, and the women also, and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Chedor Laomer, and the kings who were with him at the valley of Shaveh. The same is the king's vale. Here for me is another picture that we're going to see in Israel over and over and over throughout the Tanakh, throughout the scriptures, and even in modern day Israel. Abram had only 318 men against how many kings? 4, 5 kings and all their armies? And he destroyed them. He beat them and was able to bring himself back. All through the scriptures, we see a very small army, a small amount of men were used so that we give the glory to our God. We cannot take the glory for ourselves because it is God who holds all the power. And this next part is very interesting because out of nowhere, we read about Melchizedek, which means the righteous king, king of Salem, which today we would know as Jerusalem, brought forth bread and wine. And he was, it says, Kohen ha-elyon, Kohen le'el elyon, the priest or the Kohen of God the Most High. So this is the first Kohen we hear about. Later, God will establish this priesthood through Aaron. Another picture starts with one, and then later we're going to have many. And it says, and he blessed him. So Melchizedek, king of Salem, is our subject. He blessed him, meaning Melchizedek blessed Abram and said, "Blessed be Abram of God Most High, maker of heaven and earth." It's obvious who he's blessing. "And blessed be God the Most High, Ha-Elyon, who has delivered your enemies into your hands." And it says, he gave him 1/10 of all. We don't know who gave who, but it looks like it didn't change subjects. It seems to me that Melchizedek gave Abram 1/10 of all.
That's what it looks like.
That's certainly what it looks like. And yet all through Christianity, I've learned Abram gave Melchizedek 1/10, but it's not what the Torah says. But you have to decide that for yourself. This is my understanding of it. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me people."
Just a question, sorry.
Yes. Go ahead.
It's just inserted in there and then it goes back, like it doesn't see, it seems to have just dropped down from the sky, that whole little vignette or whatever.
I know.
So it's interesting, like I know what some people interpret it as, but it's just out of nowhere and then it's back to the regular story.
Exactly. And we'd have to do a little bit of research to see what else we could find on Melchizedek, king of Salem, but I will leave that to you.
Yeah.
And the king of Sodom said to Abram, give me people and take the goods. In other words, he wanted slaves. Take everything else for yourself. Or he wanted his own people back. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I've lifted up my hand to the Lord, Adonai, or El Elyon, the maker of heaven and earth. I told him, I swore to him that I would not take a thread, a shoelace, or of anything that is yours, because lest you should say, I have made Abram rich. Save only that which the young men have eaten. Let them, whatever the young men have eaten, let them keep. And the portion of that the young men which went with me, Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre, let them take their portion. So Abram was not looking for anything. He already had enough. But he said, let the men who fought with me, let them have their portion, and the rest belongs to you. God forbid you should think that you took anything from me. Later on, we see Abram doing the same thing again when he goes to bury his wife, Sarah at that point, because their names were changed. We'll see that soon. And when he goes to the Hittite, to Het, and he asks to buy the place to bury his wife. And he says, how much do you want? And Het says, oh, you know what? God forbid I should take anything from you, but this is how much it costs. It cost something like 400 shekels. I don't remember. But you don't need to give me anything. It's okay. Abram paid him the last penny, even though it was a very expensive amount for that time. But Abram gave it to him, lest anyone should think that he would take from them. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your magen. Your reward shall be exceedingly great. And Abram said, O Lord God, what will you give me, seeing that I am childless? I'm still childless. He was 75, so it means his wife was 10 years younger. She was 65. She still had no child. And he who is possessor of my home, the one who was he was the one who took care of everything, is Eliezer of Damascus. So I guess if you had one child, everything would go to him. And Abram said, to me, you have given no seed, and the one born in my house is to be my heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, that man shall not be your heir, but he who comes forth from your own kishkas shall be your heir. Your bowels, and in modern Hebrew, it's your stomach, but we know the area it comes from the lower parts. And he brought him forth abroad and said, he brought him outside and he said, look toward the heavens, count the stars, if you're able to count them. And he said to him, that's as many as your seed shall be. And it says, and he believed in the Lord. The Hebrew word is ha-he, amen, ha-amen, which means it comes from the word, we see the word emunah, which means faith. He had faith, he believed, he trusted in the Lord, although trust is betachon, but we know he had faith, and he counted it to him for righteousness. Now we know that Abram was not a great man of faith, because we just saw what he said. Tell Sarai's tell them you're my sister. And he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldees to give you this land to inherit it. And he said, O Lord God, how shall I know that I shall inherit it? So here, this great man of faith is asking God, how shall I know? His word isn't enough. And he said to him, bring me a heifer, a female calf, 3 years old, and a female goat, 3 years old, and a ram, 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he brought all these, and he divided them in the midst, and laid each over against the others. But the birds he did not divide. The birds of prey came down upon the carcasses, and Abram drove them away. And it came to pass when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, a dread, even a great darkness fell upon him. And he said to Abram, know for sure that your seed, the generations to come, shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them for 400 years. This is where it seems that we were in Egypt for 400 years, but in actuality, we were only there for a little over 200, but the 400 years begin with this prophecy, because God is telling Abraham that we would be foreigners in that land, in a land that wasn't ours. We know it to be Egypt. And that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. He judges the Egyptians. And afterwards they shall come out with great substance. In other words, Israelites would leave wealthy. But you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried in a good old age. And here again, we have the understanding that in peace we go to be with our fathers in heaven. Well, not in heaven, as the Christians understand it, but there is a place where we go to be with our fathers until this earth is restored. You shall be buried in a good old age. And in the 4th generation, they shall come back here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So the 4th generation, 400 years is 40 times 10. So in the 4th generation, they shall come back hither. To tell you the truth, I didn't research this again. I don't know everything that it means, but that's again something that you could look for if you're interested in your own time. And it came to pass when the sun went down, there was thick darkness. Behold, a smoking furnace and a flaming torch that passed between these pieces. And in that day, the Lord made a covenant. This is what we call Brit HaBeterim, the covenant of the parts, with Abram, saying, to your seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates, the land of the Kenite, the Kenizzite, the Cadmonite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Rephaim, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Girgashite, and the Jebusite. This land that we will have one day will be huge, but we don't have that yet. Now, Sarai, Abram's wife, bore him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarah said to Abram, behold now, the Lord has restrained me, held me back from having a child. Go in, I pray her, I beg you, into my handmaid. So it may be that I shall be built up through her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. So in those days, obviously, if you had a slave, if the slave gave birth, it belonged to the household. This you'll see later on again throughout the history of the early Israelites. This was always so, that the slave belonged to the master. So here, Sarai is not believing God that Abram would have a child from his own loins. Or maybe she was interpreting it that it could be from his, but maybe she hadn't heard that it was going to be from hers. So he brought her his beautiful handmaid. Now, what guy would say no? And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her handmaid, after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to Abram, her husband, to be his wife. So he had a second wife. She became like a wife. And he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. She became so proud, and she, look at me, I'm pregnant from your husband, and you're not. And Sarai said to Abram, "Oi, what did I do? My wrong. I gave my handmaid into your bosom, and when she saw she conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Let the Lord judge between me and you." Poor Abram. Here he is. He's already has to deal with a nagging wife. Two of them. But Abram said to Sarai, "Behold, your maid is your problem. Do whatever you want with her. Do what's good in your eyes." And Sarai dealt harshly with her, so that Hagar fled, just ran away. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shear. And the angel of the Lord said, "Hagar, Sarai's handmaid, where are you coming from? And where are you going?" And she said, "I'm running away from the face of my mistress Sarai." And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hands." In other words, get with the program and be humble. And the angel of the Lord said to her, "I will greatly multiply your seed, that it shall not be numbered for multitude."
There's something about that. Sorry.
Yes,
Like
yes.
that's similar, lest we forget. I mean, that God is blessing. That's a promise of blessing to the Arab nation.
Exactly. And the Arab nations also come from Abraham.
Right.
And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael," like the man who heard Ishmael, heard God. God heard, because the Lord has heard your affliction. And listen to what he says of his offspring. "He shall be a wild donkey of a man." Now, we all know how stubborn donkeys are and how wild they are. It's hard to tame a donkey. "His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the face of all his brothers." So you see that it's so true. If you look at the Arab people today, wild, like they're killing each other, always fighting against each other. And when they don't have someone to fight against each other, they fight against everybody else.
Yeah.
And she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, "You are a God of seeing." So you see that Hagar had a relationship with God and acknowledged who he was. For she said, have I even here seen him who sees me?
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's amazing. They began knowing the Creator. Therefore, the well was called Be'er, which calls well, Lahai Roi, which is the well where I see. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Vered. And the Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of the son whom Hagar bore Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old. So he was 86 when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram.
There is a rabbinic teaching that
Yes,
says that the works of the parents are a sign to their children. In Hebrew, we say Maaseh Avot Siman Levanim. I can see that our father Abraham had many problems in his house.
Yeah, yes.
So we must be careful, because if the patriarchs had these family problems, surely maybe we too.
Exactly. It gives us a picture of the dysfunctional families that we come from.
Exactly.
Exactly. There is no man, no human who is perfect.
Exactly.
We just rely on him. And here we're going to go until verse 27, when we will finish this parasha. And when Abraham was 99 years old, so there he was 80,
No, it's not. Oh, yeah, 99. Sorry.
90 years
Yeah,
old.
no,
and
no, you're
nine,
right. I'm sorry.
the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be wholehearted. In another place, it says perfect, but there is no perfection in man. The
Sorry,
word is tamim. Yes, Douglas.
a question. In the verse number 1, I remember that in Hebrew is the name El Shaddai. I would like to know if you know the meaning of that name in English or in English.
Yes. El Shaddai, again, a picture.
Yes.
There are many names for our God. Shad in Hebrew means breast,
Oh,
a woman's breast. It means that he is the God who nourishes us, who feeds us, who, that's how picturesque this language is.
wow. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I will make my covenant between me and you, and will multiply you exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and God spoke with him, saying, as for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations, not only the Israelites, but a multitude of nations, because we will see later that after he has Ishmael with Hagar, he marries again after Sarah dies, and he marries Keturah and has 6 more sons.
Yes, yes,
So he really is the father of a multitude of nations,
yes.
and we are all brothers. Neither shall your name anymore be called Abram, but your name shall be called Avraham. He adds the He and the Yud, which means he's putting his name, his own name, Yud He, into Avram, and he's becoming Abraham. For the father of a multitude of nations I have made you, and I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations from you, and kings shall come from you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your seed, and after you throughout their generations, as an everlasting covenant, to be a God to you and to your seed after you. And I will give to you and to your seed after you the land of your sojournings, where you live, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession. It's ours forever. No one can take it from us.
Yes, yes.
And I will be their God. The only way that we can be kicked out of our land is when we are disobedient. No enemy can ever come against us if we are obedient to our God.
Yes.
And God said to Abraham, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your seed after you, throughout their generations. And this is my covenant. Now he's giving us another covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your seed after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of a covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every male throughout your generations. he who is born in the house or bought with money of any foreigner who is not of your seed. So all those who are not born of him, any stranger among us will be considered part of us. They need to be circumcised. He who is born in your house, he who is bought with your money, in other words, a servant, needs to be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised male, who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He's no longer an Israelite. He has broken my covenant. So today, when you see Jews who are living in California or in other places who think that this is a barbaric practice, they are cut off from our people. And God said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall no longer call her Sarai, but Sarah, again, adding the hey to her name,
Yes.
shall be her name. And I will bless her. And moreover, I will give you a son from her, and I will bless her. And she will be the mother of nations. Kings of people shall be from her. Then Abram fell upon his face and laughed and said in his heart, shall a child be born to him who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear? And Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. And God said, no, Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son, and you shall call his name Yitzchak, which means laughter. And I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you, and I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful and will multiply him exceedingly. He shall have 12 princes. Like Isaac will have 12 nations will come from Jacob. 12 princes will come from Ishmael. And I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this set time next year. And he left off talking with him, and God went up from Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael and all who were born in his house, and all who were bought with his money, his servants, every male among Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in the same day as God had said to him. There was no doubt when God speaks to you, you move, you act. Abraham was 90 years old, 99, when he circumcised the flesh of his foreskin. Notice that his son, Isaac, will be born after the circumcision. Ishmael was born before Abraham was circumcised. Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, which is why all the Arab nations now circumcise their children when they're 13. In the same day, Abraham was circumcised with Ishmael, his son, and all the men of his house, those born in his house, those bought with the money of a stranger, all his servants, were circumcised with him. And that's the end of this beautiful portion. So do you have anything you'd like to add or something that stood out for you?
A lot of things, I just can't formulate it. It's so rich, those passages.
Yeah.
And we sort of, I've seen them so many times, and if you don't realize what you're reading, you can just forget and not realize, what it means. Even the fact that Ishmael was born before Abraham was circumcised.
Right.
That's an important important.
Exactly. And he wasn't chosen. Isaac would be chosen. God always is showing us that he's the one who chooses, but he chooses for a purpose. He still blessed Ishmael, but Ishmael was not going to be the one who would descend from Abram's loin, Abram, Sarah, to form a nation, because we're going to see the steps. We will continue with the process over the next few months, and it's going to be a beautiful one. And the reason will be unfolded as we go. It's very exciting. I love these stories, and we miss so much when we don't read it in its simplicity. We forget that God did not choose at the base of Mount Sinai to speak to those with a PhD or those who are rabbis who have studied years in university, or pastors or priests or theologians. He spoke to people like you and I. He spoke to slaves, those who left Egypt as slaves. God spoke to them directly, and God spoke to Abram directly. He spoke to Noah directly. He spoke to Adam directly. And these men were not perfect, as we are not perfect. But God is so merciful to us. He keeps allowing us to come to him, to work with him, to have a relationship with him. That is the bottom line of what the Torah teaches, how to have a relationship with the creator, the Borei Olam, the creator of the universe. And that is, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peggy, I have
Yes.
a question.
Yes, Douglas.
Douglas, just one thing. Is it possible to turn the volume up a little bit on your microphone? Or
Let me see if I can turn it up for him.
Can you help me with something?
Yes.
In the Hebrew thought, there is a difference between complete and perfect.
Complete and perfect.
Yes.
In using which words, or what are you referring to?
To Abraham, to Isaac, and Jacob, for instance, they are imperfect,
Yes.
but they were complete.
Well, what does that mean? Complete.
Uh,
Because you have to go to the word that describes them. In Hebrew, it's tam, ish tam. And it has more of the understanding of being someone without guile, without, I don't know how to say, do you know what guile means?
yeah, without the deceit or almost like an innocence.
Let me see if I can see the word guile in Spanish.
I remember that I don't remember exactly, but in one of the Gospels, Yeshua says, "Be perfect." Remember?
Yes, I do remember, except he'd never said be perfect. He would never say be perfect. He was quoting the Torah. And the Torah doesn't say be perfect. It says kadosh, the word kadosh.
Oh, okay. The correct is kadosh.
Kadosh.
Okay, isn't perfect.
No, has nothing to do with perfection. There is no man who is perfect.
Yes, exactly.
It has to do with the word kadosh means separate, to be separated for something.
Yes.
And God wants us to separate ourselves from the rest of the world, not physically, because Yeshua said, be in the world, but not of it.
Yes.
You have to live in the world, but we don't have to be like them.
Yes.
And he knew that we cannot be perfect, but we can choose differently. We can there's a word in Spanish called engaño.
Sí.
So without guile, sin engañó,
Oh,
without guile. We have to be, that's what ishtam means. Tamim is the word that is used. Gentiles, the Greek understanding, use those words perfect because they were forming a religion where Jesus would be a perfect man. He would be God incarnate. That's not what it teaches in the Torah.
exactly, yes.
It's the exact opposite. We cannot be perfect. That's what keeps us humble. Only our God is perfect.
Yes.
So yeah, it's like you had said before, we're set aside for a purpose. We're set aside to worship God and to follow the commandments, just as even prostitutes, remember you're talking about that example, are
Yeah.
set apart to worship their gods or whatever.
Yes.
There's Douglas, let me explain what Miriam is saying. There is a verse in Leviticus
Yes.
that speaks about the holy goddesses. Though there were temples to the gods, like the temple of Diana,
Yes.
and in them they were called temple prostitutes. And these prostitutes could either be male or female, and they were called kedusha and kedush. They were separated for their prostitution.
Wow.
The word separate, kadosh, is an adjective. It is not a noun. We either separate ourselves for good or we separate ourselves for evil.
Okay.
God wants us to be kadosh for him, but
So,
perfect we cannot be.
so the meaning is kadosh.
Yes.
Okay. So I mentioned that because I remember that in some verses says, "Go before me and be perfect." Yes.
Yes, but that's how they were translated.
Yes.
We need to be very careful when translating from Hebrew to another language.
So the correct is there. Be holy.
Be
kadosh.
holy, be separated
Be separate. Okay.
for me. Nobody says we can be perfect. We cannot be.
Yes. Yes.
You can be righteous, but not perfect.
Yes. Yes.
We could be righteous in the moment because believe me, in the next moment, we may not be
No,
so
of course,
righteous.
but I used to be taught, nobody's righteous, but we can be righteous in that
Yes.
we have our direction is to our desire and our is to worship God.
We
But-
have freedom of choice. We have free will to choose to do the right thing. That's what being righteous is. It says Noah was righteous in his generation because he chose to do the right thing. He chose to obey and to build an ark when everybody else thought he was crazy. It had never rained on earth. They were living in a mountain and he was building an ark and they said, rain is coming. They thought he was nuts. And here it says Abram was considered to be righteous because he believed God.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Jerry, you have anything to say before we close?
Yeah, I have a couple, one or two things. It's just an offshoot, Douglas. I just want to comment on what you said, complete. And I'm not sure if it fits in, but just to add to it. So we are complete. Just a statement, and you can comment on it. We are complete in that we are. We are completely humanly imperfect, but we're completely imperfect, completely humanly imperfect.
Yeah,
But
well,
like to what you said before, that you said we are complete. Yes, I agree. We are complete in what we are.
yes, it's like a play on words in English. The word complete also can be translated as whole, W-H-O-L-E. And how do you say that in Spanish? Entera or no? Entier.
Todo o yes, todo.
Todo. All, a whole.
Exactly.
But you could also say wholly given to something, completely given over to
Yes,
something.
yes.
Yes,
Thank
exactly.
you, Jerry.
Pardon?
Thank you.
Yeah, I have one more for you, and then one more later. Peggy says I do something later. I'm just going to tell you a little. No, I'll do it. I'll do it
No,
all.
tell us now. Tell us.
If you don't like it, you take it off.
Okay.
You know how to do that?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, Douglas, because I'm not sure we're supposed to have, I'm not sure what it means, like joking around, like levity. I'm not sure what levity means, joking around too much. I'm going, do you know the difference between complete and finished?
Complete and finish.
Okay, don't stress on it. It's just a little play. If you marry the right person, you're complete,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
If you marry the wrong person, or you notice, Peggy,
You're finished.
You're
you
finished.
marry the wrong person, you're finished.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Very good.
Thank
And
you,
if you
very good.
marry the right person and you're fooling around with the wrong person and the right person finds out, you're completely finished.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Very good. I like that, Jerry.
Yes.
Very
Thank you,
good.
Jerry.
And bring some humor into it. So I found this song, which actually was taught to me by my friend's husband, Mina's husband, Sam. When I first came back to Montreal after I had been through the New Age and my life was a mess, Sam gave me, and I came to God, Sam gave me my first guitar to start again. And he taught me this song, and it was from this portion called Lecha. Lecha me'atzecha. Get yourself out of the land. Umi maledetecha, from where you were born. Umi beitavecha, from the house of your father. El haaretz, to the land. Asher ani noten lecha, that I'm giving you. Asher ani yivarechecha, where I will bless you. Lech lecha me'atzecha umimaledetecha umibeit avecha el haaretz asher ani noten lecha asher ani evarechecha. Lech lecha me'atzecha umimaledetecha umibeit avecha El haaretz asher ani noten lecha, asher ani evarechecha.
Nice, I like that.
I love that
We
song.
used to sing that.
We used to sing it, yes, and we're still singing it. And one day we will all be in the land and we will all be blessed, living forever in the new Jerusalem. We're looking forward to that day. So Douglas, welcome, and you're very welcome to join us anytime and add and give your opinions. Hope to see you on Shabbat. Did you did you receive the link for Shabbat that I sent you?
Yes, I received it.
Wonderful. And Jerry, good to see you. I always appreciate your input.
One comment
Thanks a lot for
after.
everything.
You're very welcome. Do you want to say a comment now, Jer?
No, after.
After, okay. Miriam, always good to see you.
Yes, good to see you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mildred, good to see you. And I wish you all the best until we come again next week when we're going to look at Va'era.
Yes.
So have a good week.
Bye.
Pardon?
Have a good night.
Yes. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
You too.